You look at your dog and think he's just full of energy. He never stops, jumps, barks, runs from one side to the other for no apparent reason, destroys cushions, shoes, whatever is in front of him. And you laugh or sigh and say, that's just how he is. But what if it isn't? What if what you're calling energy is actually suffering? This is the most common confusion among dog owners, and it's also the one that hurts the animal the most in silence. Hyperactivity and anxiety look the same on the outside. Same agitation, same noise, same mess. But on the inside, they are completely different worlds, and treating one as if it were the other can make everything worse. In this video, you'll learn 7 signs that separate a hyperactive dog from an anxious one, backed by science with no technical knowledge required. You'll leave this video looking at your dog in a way that will never be the same again. Some of these signs are obvious once you know what to look for. Others are so subtle that most owners go years without noticing them. And I'll save the most important one for the end because it's the sign almost no one recognizes, and it might be exactly what your dog is doing right now while you're watching this video. Have you ever taken your dog to a park, let him run until he was tired, came back home, and he was still restless? If so, pay close attention to this first sign because it already tells you a lot. A hyperactive dog has above-average physical energy. That's real. But physical energy has a limit. When it's spent, it's spent. He lies down, takes a deep breath, falls asleep. The body needed rest, and he responded. An anxious dog doesn't work like that. You can spend 2 hours at the park, go on a long walk, throw the ball until your arm hurts, and when you get home, he'll still be unsettled. He'll keep pacing. He'll keep walking in circles. He'll keep following you from room to room. Why? Because his problem isn't physical. Science calls this chronic arousal, a state of nervous system activation that has nothing to do with muscle fatigue. It's as if the dog's brain is stuck in an alert mode that the body simply can't turn off, no matter how much he moves. Think of it this way. Imagine you're extremely anxious before a difficult situation. You could run 5 kilometers and still feel your heart racing. The exercise didn't solve the problem because the problem wasn't physical. That's exactly what happens with an anxious dog. The hyperactive dog gets tired. The anxious dog doesn't switch off. This is one of the first criteria behavioral veterinarians use in an evaluation. Does exercise solve it? If the answer is yes, physical energy is the main factor. If the answer is no, or if the improvement is minimal and short-lived, the condition likely has an emotional component that needs to be investigated. This doesn't mean exercise is useless for anxious dogs. It means that for them, exercise alone isn't enough. And it means that if you've been trying to wear your dog out, hoping he'll finally relax, and it never really works, you might be dealing with something very different from what you think. Hold on to that thought, because the next sign will show you what happens in your dog's body during the moments when he's doing nothing, and that's where the difference becomes even clearer. Here's a question most dog owners never ask. What does your dog do when nothing is happening? Not when guests arrive, not when you come home, not when he hears a noise outside. In neutral moments, when the house is quiet, you're sitting down, and the routine offers no particular stimulation, what does he do? This question matters more than it seems, because it's in these moments, when there's no stimulation, that the difference between hyperactivity and anxiety becomes exposed, almost undeniable. A hyperactive dog in these moments relaxes. He lies down, closes his eyes, he might even snore. The world stopped offering stimulation, so he rests and waits for the next one to come. He's like an energy machine that goes into standby mode when there's nothing to do. An anxious dog doesn't go into standby mode. His eyes stay open. His ears are slightly raised or constantly turning toward any sound. His posture is tense even when lying down, as if he's ready to get up at any second. His breathing is a bit faster than it should be. Sometimes one eye is half closed, but it snaps open the moment you move. He's not resting, he's monitoring. Science explains this through the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, the system responsible for the fight or flight response. In anxious dogs, this system operates at an elevated baseline level. That means even with no real threat present, the dog's body is partially in emergency mode, ready to react, all the time. It's exhausting, literally. Dogs with this pattern tend to sleep less deeply. They wake up more easily, and even when they appear rested, their nervous system never truly decompresses. You've probably noticed this before without having a name for it. That moment when you look at your dog lying down and think, he looks uneasy even when he's still. That intuition is real. There's a simple exercise you can try. Over the next 48 hours, observe your dog in 3 neutral moments when the house is quiet and nothing is happening. Watch his ears, posture, and breathing. Does he look loose, or does he look like he's waiting for something? You don't need any equipment. You just need attention. And once you learn to read rest, you start to read your dog in a completely different way. But there's a next step in this reading that sharpens the diagnosis even further. So far, we've talked about what happens when nothing is happening. In the next section, we'll talk about what happens when something does happen and how each dog's triggers reveal exactly what you're dealing with. Be honest. Does your dog get agitated by everything or by specific things? This distinction seems simple, and that's exactly why most people never stop to make it. A hyperactive dog has clear triggers. You can list them. Guests arrive, he explodes. You pick up the leash, he goes wild. You open the door, he bolts. These triggers are predictable, they make sense, and when the stimulus is gone, he returns to his normal state. An anxious dog is different. He may react to triggers you can't even identify. A car passing by, a subtle change in your tone of voice, you putting on your shoes, you glancing at the clock. Sometimes nothing at all, and he's still restless. This has a name: stimulus hypersensitivity. In anxious dogs, the nervous system's activation threshold is lower than normal. That means stimuli that would be neutral for other dogs, a faint noise, a subtle and environmental shift, a micro-expression on the owner's face, can trigger an alert response. Think of it like the volume of music. A hyperactive dog reacts when the volume is high. An anxious dog reacts when you barely touch the control. And here's the detail that changes everything. The anxious dog isn't reacting to the event. He's reacting to the anticipation of the event. The anxious brain learns patterns and starts reacting before the stimulus even arrives. You haven't left the house yet, but he's already spiraling because you picked up your keys. This matters because many owners try to avoid triggers, and with a hyperactive dog, that can work reasonably well. With an anxious dog, it doesn't, because he doesn't need the actual trigger. He's created a chain of anticipation that activates on its own. If you're trying not to signal to your dog that you're about to leave and he still panics, this is anticipatory anxiety, and it's a clinically relevant sign. If this video is making you look at your dog in a different way, consider subscribing to the channel. We publish every week to help dog owners understand what their animals are trying to communicate before silence becomes costly. The next section is where the separation between these two conditions becomes even more striking, because we're going to talk about what happens when you close the door and leave, and what your dog does when no one is watching. Have you ever come home and found something destroyed? A torn cushion, trash scattered everywhere, scratches on the door. And you looked at your dog with that mix of frustration and guilt and thought, he did this because he was bored. Maybe, but maybe not. This is the situation where the difference between hyperactivity and anxiety becomes the clearest and the most important to understand. A hyperactive dog, when left alone, gets bored. He has energy with no outlet, no stimulation, no direction, so he creates his own entertainment. He destroys things because he needs something to do. If you leave toys, hidden treats, cognitive stimulation, he often does fine. An anxious dog isn't bored. He's in panic. And panic isn't solved with toys. Science calls the more severe form separation anxiety, a state of acute distress that begins the moment the owner leaves, and sometimes even before. Studies using cameras to monitor dogs alone at home have shown that the breakdown can start within the first 2 minutes after departure. Intense vocalization, attempts to open doors and windows, destruction focused on exit areas. Notice that detail, exit areas. A bored dog destroys whatever is in front of him. An anxious dog destroys near doors, near windows, near where you disappeared. Because he's not looking for entertainment, he's trying to get to you. And there's more. Dogs with separation anxiety often show elevated cortisol, the stress hormone, measurable in blood and saliva hours after separation. Their bodies registered the event as a real threat, a threat to survival. From their perspective, it makes sense. Dogs are social animals. Isolation evolutionarily meant danger. For anxious dogs, this primitive instinct hasn't been regulated, and when you walk out the door, their brain triggers an alarm they can't shut off on their own. This isn't bad behavior, it's suffering. And the difference matters, because the solution is completely different. Wearing your dog out before leaving works reasonably well for a hyperactive dog. For an anxious one, you can do all of that and still come home to scratched doors, because the problem was never energy. It was fear. But this goes even deeper, because destruction is just the most obvious sign. In the next section, we'll talk about the pattern of destruction itself and what it reveals about your dog's emotional state in a way most owners never connect. Let's talk about how your dog destroys things. It sounds like a small detail. It's not. The pattern of destruction is one of the richest behavioral indicators there is, because it reveals the motivation behind the act, and motivation is exactly what you need to understand in order to know what you're dealing with. A hyperactive dog destroys out of excess. Undirected energy turns into behavior. He goes for what's available, what smells interesting, what has a satisfying texture to chew. There's no specific target pattern, there's opportunity. If you leave the shoe on the floor, he'll go for the shoe. If you put the shoe away, he'll go for the chair leg. It's boredom-driven destruction, guided by convenience. Now, look at the anxious dog. He has patterns. First pattern, a preference for objects that carry the owner's scent. Clothes, pillows, socks. This isn't random. Studies in ethology, the scientific study of animal behavior, show that anxious dogs seek olfactory comfort when under stress. Your scent partially regulates their nervous system, so they destroy these objects not out of anger, but because they're trying to get closer to you in the only way available to them. Second pattern, destruction focused on containment or exit areas, doors, windows, gates. Repetitive scratching in the same exact spot. This is escape behavior. The animal is literally trying to get out of that situation. Third pattern, compulsive repetition. Anxious dogs often don't vary the intensity of destruction. They repeat the same behavior over and over, even when there's nothing left to destroy. Chewing the same corner of the cushion, scratching the same point on the wall. This has a clinical name, Canine Compulsive Behavior, or CCB. It's defined as a pattern of behavior repeated out of context and with an intensity disproportionate to the stimulus. It's the canine equivalent of what humans call obsessive-compulsive behavior, and it shares the same root, unresolved chronic anxiety. Think about what that means. When your dog destroys the same corner of the couch for the 10th time, he's not being stubborn. He's stuck in a loop his nervous system can't break on its own. And here's the contrast that changes everything. A hyperactive dog destroys and stops. Energy spent, mission accomplished. An anxious dog may keep going even without energy because the driving force isn't physical, it's emotional. If you've ever come home and noticed destruction that felt methodical, repetitive, focused, as if there was a specific logic that made sense to your dog but not to you, you now understand what was happening. But there's an even intimate sign than this, and it's one that happens when you're present, not when you leave. It's something you've probably noticed before but never knew how to interpret. Let's talk about that now. When was the last time you paid attention to your dog's eyes? Not during play. Not when he was asking for food, in a neutral moment, when you were sitting quietly and he was on the other side of the room. What was he doing with his eyes? This detail, subtle, easy to ignore, is one of the most revealing signs of the difference between these two conditions, and it's also one of the most emotionally heavy once you understand what you're seeing. A hyperactive dog in those moments probably wasn't looking at you. He was looking at the door, the window, anything that might offer the next stimulus. His gaze is driven by anticipation. He wants something, and he's scanning for where it will come from. An anxious dog is looking at you, specifically, continuously, with an intensity that you might sometimes mistake for affection or for a demand. But it's not affection, and it's not a demand. It's monitoring. Behavioral science calls this social referencing, the ability dogs have developed to use the human face as a source of information about the environment. When something is ambiguous, the dog looks to the owner to decide how to react. It's an adaptive, healthy behavior in normal doses. In an anxious dog, this behavior is always on. He's not looking at you because he wants attention. He's reading you, analyzing your posture, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, trying to predict what's about to happen next. Are you leaving? Staying? Changing the routine? He needs to know. He needs to be prepared. Research on attachment theory in dogs. Yes, dogs form attachment bonds with their owners that are structurally similar to human attachment, shows that dogs with attachment anxiety display heightened social vigilance. They monitor their owners far more frequently than dogs with secure attachment, and this vigilance increases in the moments that precede changes in routine. You've probably felt this before, that sense that your dog knows you're about to leave before you've even done anything obvious. That's because he's watching you so closely that he's learned your patterns better than you consciously know them yourself. This isn't cuteness, it's an alarm system he built to protect himself. And here's the emotional weight of it. This dog isn't resting in your presence. He's working. He's in constant vigilance. And when you leave, that work turns into panic because his source of information about the world disappears. You are the center of his world, not in a poetic way, in a neurological one. That changes what it means to be present for this animal. And now we reach the final sign, the one I promised from the beginning, the one most owners see every day and never connect to anxiety, because it seems too small to matter, but it's actually the most eloquent signal your dog can give you. I told you from the beginning I would save the most important one for last. Does your dog lick himself excessively, bite his own paws, chase his tail? Is there a specific spot on his body, the paw, the flank, the base of the tail, that he keeps returning to over and over again? You've probably seen this before, and you probably thought it was cute or odd or simply ignored it. Don't ignore it anymore. These behaviors have a technical name, stress-induced stereotypies. They are repetitive motor patterns with no apparent function that the animal performs in response to chronic states of high emotional tension. In simple terms, it's what the body does when the mind can't process what it's feeling. Humans do this too. Nail biting, twisting hair, lip chewing. These are self-regulatory behaviors, the nervous system trying to calm itself through repetitive, predictable physical stimulation. In an anxious dog, this mechanism can escalate. Excessive paw licking often starts as self-regulation and can evolve into skin lesions, the so-called acral lick dermatitis, open wounds caused by compulsive repetition of the behavior. Many veterinarians treat these wounds as dermatological issues, and they keep coming back because the root cause isn't in the skin, it's emotional. Tail chasing, often filmed and shared as something funny, is one of the most documented compulsive canine behaviors. In puppies, it can be normal exploration. In adult dogs, especially when it happens frequently, for long durations and with increasing intensity, it's a sign of distress. The dog is trapped in a behavioral loop he cannot interrupt on his own. This is the silent cry of the anxious dog. It's not barking, not destruction, not visible agitation. It's a quiet, repetitive behavior that often happens right in front of your owner, during the day, without drawing attention, and that's exactly why it's the signal that takes the longest to be recognized. A hyperactive dog doesn't do this. He directs energy outward, to you, to the environment, to objects. An anxious dog, when there's nowhere else for that energy to go, turns it inward, toward his own body. Think about what that means. This dog, the one you see every day, who sleeps in your room, who runs to greet you when you come home, may be carrying a level of internal tension he has no other way to communicate, and the only language available to him is his own body. That moment when he licks himself on the couch while you're watching TV is not small. For him, it never was. If you recognized any of these signs in your dog, the next step isn't guilt, it's action. A veterinarian behaviorist or a veterinarian trained in animal behavior can assess the situation and guide you toward the right approach. Sometimes it's environmental management, sometimes it's enrichment, sometimes it's medical support, often it's a combination. What matters is that now you know, and knowing changes everything. That behavior you've been seeing every day, thinking it was just the way he is, might actually be a request for help he's been making for months. He has no other voice, only his body. And now you know how to read what he's been trying to say.
If you made it this far, you're already the kind of owner we want around. Not the owner with the perfect dog, but the one who pauses to think about what their dog is feeling, even when it's uncomfortable to realize you may have missed some signs along the way. That's why this channel exists. Every week, we publish a video to help you understand what your dog is trying to tell you, grounded in science, without complicated language, and without making you feel guilty for not knowing sooner. If that resonates with you, subscribe. It's the simplest way to keep receiving this kind of content every week. And before you close this video, out of the 7 signs, which one made the most sense to you? Which one did you recognize in your own dog? Write it in the comments. It can be just one word, it can be your whole story. We read everything, and many times what owners share down there becomes the next video.